Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wargames show. Hey, everyone. We're here from BoLS.
Hello.
Got Larry here. That's me. Adam.
Yo, everybody.
Got Abe.
That's
We're
me.
We're all in our various locations. All kinds of stuff going on this week. Where do we want to start off in 40K land? We got a little bit of AOS. We'll hit that at the very end. But overall in 40K, it looks like we have not had 40K stuff officially in 2 months now? It's been a long time since there's been an actual 40K release. Probably what was the last one? It was like the box sets, right?
Yeah,
Like
the new boxes, the new starter boxes, the
Yeah,
official.
like the big, the big, the medium, and the little one, and that was in like early July or mid July, somewhere in there is when those came out, I think.
Yeah.
So, so it's been a while. We've been waiting. We've had the month of just letting all the assembly data sheets have been dripping out around the world, and everyone's been like, "Oh my god, there's something new to talk about. What is up with these?" And then they had typos, and everything was all weird. And I mean, those are still coming out. There's still some of those dropped today. It was like, hey, they're new, whatever. I'm sure we'll talk about those soon enough too. But this week we are actually seeing God honest real releases. So Games Workshop is shifting back. We've had a month of basically Age of Sigmar and all the side games, and they are moving back to 40K this week. So we have whoa, that is just making I don't even understand what's happening. There it is. We have the big thing is there's new rules. So we have there's new rules coming, and then we have a new set of products that are going to be released this upcoming week, and then that's going to get us into October, and we know that October is going to be a big, huge, giant monster month with all kinds of stuff happening in October. So I guess let's start off with the new rules. We have this whole concept of core that dropped Tuesday, I think, last Tuesday.
Yeah, last week.
It was Tuesday, Wednesday. Lots of people have been chiming in and kind of talking about it. So real quick, I'll just kind of give us the run over for those, which is that there's this new keyword. It's called core. It looks like at first people were thinking, what is this thing? Is it just basically like is it the same as troops? And no, it's not the same as troops. And they basically said it's going to be a new keyword, and it's going to affect, I think, mainly troops, but some other things as well. It's going to vary from army to army, and it is basically a filter. It is a keyword that a lot of special effects are going to key off of, and in particular, they mentioned auras. So a lot of auras are going to only work on units that are core, which is a big difference from the way 8th worked. Like right off the bat, the first thing it does is that auras, traditionally, the way things have worked for a while is auras keyed off of your own model. You always counted as being within range. So things that, anyone who had an aura, it also affected yourself. And that now is right out the window. So that immediately knocks off, most eras come from most auras are coming from characters. So all of a sudden, all those characters, every character in the game is no longer gaining the effects of their own special abilities. So that's kind of a huge change right there. And then, but we'll see where it goes from there. So, Abe, do you want to take us into kind of what are your? That's the basics. We still don't know a lot, but
sure.
But I'm sure Abe has lots of things to talk about what he thinks this is going to mean.
Well, we know, like you said, we know it's going to change how auras work. We also know that there are certain stratagems. We saw it in the Silver Skull, Silver Templar, whatever it is.
The Silver Templars.
Their White Dwarf article that some of their stratagems only worked on core things.
Oh, okay.
So it's another complication for the game. Like straight off the bat, let's be honest about it. It complicates the game more. You now have to remember not only your like overall faction keyword, but your like Imperium. But now you might have something that affects your your core, your army faction, like Space Marines, down to your specific chapter faction, down to core now, right? Like in generic things. So there's all these different things that they can go off of. So it is another complication there. It definitely, I think, is going to take people time getting used to, especially if you have lots of units mixed in together and like half are core and half aren't within an aura, and you're like, oh, I get to reroll ones in this area, and you're like, well, not on that unit, but this unit. So it's nothing that's like impossible to remember, but I definitely think there's going to be a transition period where people make mistakes with this kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
Which happens anytime you get some kind of change, and definitely if you're moving through lots of things quickly, it can affect it. I think there's some potential here. I'm interested to see. We don't really know how many units are core, or what auras are changing to only affect core. It could be interesting to see if they decide to play around with this and have certain things that change what core means, right?
Sure.
Like for instance, if you were running a Raven Wing army, could that change what core is it for your army? Or a Deathwing army, does that change what core is for your army?
Sure.
So there's definitely some potential that could be fun to play around there. Same with like Guard. If you're running a tank company, does that change what core means for your army or not?
Yep.
I think ultimately it's probably, while it's a downside, I think it does make sense that your auras don't affect yourself, though. It's probably one of the weirdest things about auras in general. Or most auras, right? The prime example is like the Space Marine captain who somehow inspires himself to be better.
Yes.
Right. Some of the magical auras, it might have made sense that it affected you, and those may continue to affect you that don't affect. Like the one we know that is changing is the Rites of Battle, right? That's the one that they previewed is changing. That's the Space Marine captain one.
Yep.
That one does make sense that it doesn't affect yourself. It's probably a needed nerf to Space Marine captains, which were like the best character in the game. Both
100%.
because they're amazing for support and could be built to be super killy. I don't know if it makes a ton of sense that it doesn't affect everything in your army, though, because like they're like, oh, this guy shouldn't be sitting back like directing the artillery, your tanks to shoot better. And I'm like, is that not something a captain can do? Just being in it. Like, are there not a tank? Maybe a separate tank officer, but like it seems like actually you could have an officer who sits back with your artillery and directs them to fire better.
The officer of the fleet. That's what that is.
Arguably, that's where the officer should be, not up with like the 1 5-man squad telling them to shoot better. But whatever.
Don't forget about the Vox communication either, Abe. It's not like they have headsets that they can,
You're right.
talk.
They don't have headsets. They can only do things. I mean, he's got to like point out individually, right?
That's why that's why they take their helmets off, so people can, so more people can hear them.
I wonder, again, we don't know what is core in different armies. I do wonder if this is going to continue the trend I'm starting to see of pushing the game towards an infantry game again.
Sure.
We've always had the question of like whether vehicles are useful or not. And 9th edition, for some vehicles like knights that were super useful in 8th has seemingly right now said, no, you're not useful at all. There was an argument that vehicles were getting better in 9th with the changes to shooting in combat and, not being able to move and not have punishment. But if they no longer get auras, that may, or, depending on what auras they no longer benefit for, that may push you back to infantry being more powerful. And there's definitely an argument that says, Thomas has talked about before, but the best army at this point is just a bunch of infantry that you put on an objective.
Sure.
And if they're core and they get all your auras, that's only going to make that an even better, as opposed to, I'm going to take this one vehicle on my list that doesn't benefit from my list anymore.
I mean, I think that what they're going to do with core is 40K has always had this weird, like you were saying, it's had this weird, fuzzy area where they know that they want to make lots of kits and they want to give that represent all types of military hardware within a faction, right? So there's everything from your super elite commanders, whether they're brave Marines or they're weird funky aliens, all the way to their baseline troops, all the way to their weird exotic war machines, and everything in between. So they've had no issue adding things to the game, and they always want to add more and more things, so you get to see more and more of how all these militaries in the Grimdark work. But they've never had a firm idea, probably since like maybe ever, like maybe like since at least like third or fourth edition. They've never had a firm mechanism to actually say, but within all that, the game is actually supposed to be about this. Like the game, like we want the game to be about large groups of infantry running around shooting each other, right?
Sure.
So what tends to happen from edition to edition? I mean, if that's true, maybe they don't want the game to be about that. So from edition to edition, as the rules shift, basically it's like, okay, the best thing in the game is now these 3 tanks, and now all the game becomes, well, I have my super vehicles, and then all the infantry and everything just becomes irrelevant, and then the game just it's almost like you're playing, I would say that the height of this was actually 7th and 8th, where you saw things like super heavies and knights just took over, and effectively you were just playing a 28 millimeter version of Titanicus. It was, I have my 3 things that matter, and then you have your 3 things that matter, and they're all buffed up, and then we have a bunch of junk units that actually have no bearing on the game at all, right? So, and core is going to be something that's going to let them, on a per army basis, define, hey, this is what this army is supposed to be about, which I think is cool, because like you're saying, it may be that, like, as an example, for Marines, maybe they do want to say, you know what, Marines are supposed to be about infantry. We want Marine infantry to be core and to get all the cool combos and special effects. But for Guard, maybe it's not. Maybe they do want Guard to be like, yeah, Guard have some infantry, but they also have some tanks. Because we want Guard to be about that kind of thing.
Right now, this isn't going to affect Guard much at all, because they have almost no auras in their list.
Stratagems. We now have a known case where
it can affect stratagems. Yeah, I think one of the things that core is it kind of admits that their force org chart is broken, though, right?
Yes.
Because in the past, the way that 100%. You could say this should have your army should have a lot of these guys in it was that you made them troops, and then you said you're gonna have to have some of these guys in your army now. They're your one, you have one or maybe 2 troop options, and you have to take some troops in your army. You're going to have some of these guys. Now they can't do that. So honestly, the core doesn't feel like it should exist to me. It feels like it should go off of, it should almost feel like it should be going off of the force org chart, right? Like it should just affect troop choices or whatever.
I actually mentioned this a little bit today too, about should all troops be core, because we got a little tease that there's going to be elite units that are core, fast attack that'll be core. But you're right, Abe. You're absolutely right about the force org charts. There's different detachments that they actually come up with. Vanguard detachments, outrider detachments, stuff like that, where the focus for those specific detachments was fast attack or elite or heavy, all of those different detachments. The core of that detachment was not a troop, right? So fundamentally, if I'm building an army based around that detachment, the core of my army should be that type of thing. I think they're going to play around with this core concept more in maybe not this edition, maybe towards the middle codex of this edition or future editions at some point. But I agree with you. I think this core concept, the idea that we have to add a core keyword to force people to take core units so that their army functions a particular way. I think it shows that the force org chart is kind of busted right now. And I think it also can be an attempt to kind of rein in some of the other armies, the more extreme cases. But to me, a lot of this does feel like this is one of those instances where Games Workshop has a particular vision of how the game is supposed to be played, and people aren't, or people being like the meta, I guess, especially in 8th and 7th edition, people were not playing the way it's meant to be played. That's why we had stuff like the Rule of 3 introduced, because when they designed the game, they didn't think that, somebody's going to bring, 9 Hive Tyrants with wings. That's not a thing anybody would ever do. Why would you ever build an army like that? Surprise, American. So America does. So that's how we play in America, is like, what's good? Take all of that and then ignore what you don't have to. So again, that's kind of a dig on a tournament scene in general, but I mean, it was a thing that actually happened. We actually had and saw,
It was a
7
Scotsman,
hive tyrants,
I
7
think
winged
they were the
hive
ones.
tyrants.
I think
Yeah.
the Scottish guy is the one who ruined
mean,
it for everyone.
Going back
Right.
to what both you guys were saying, yeah, I think that I would consider that the entire concept of trying to control, to incentivize players to build the right way through force org charts, I think can be considered a failure. It has been a failure across all editions. It's never worked. They've tried different things from edition to edition. Now the force org chart works this way. Now these are minimum. Now you have to have this. They've tried percentages. They've tried force org slots, but all that it's ever done is it's been a stick, not a carrot. So all that people have ever done with the force org chart is they've looked at it begrudgingly, and they've not said, this is really cool, I agree, I'm going to build a fluffy army. They said, I'm going to take the most broken units possible and then spend the least amount of points buying these dumb, crappy units that have nothing to do with anything else just because you're making me. And that's why you saw scouts and conscripts and every and cultists and everything, all of the trash units that became popular because the force org chart was never... It never worked as intended. It never actually worked to actually incentivize people to build armies. It was just seen as take your medicine. It was something people.
That's literally why people call it the troop tax, right?
Yeah.
Like
so,
people called it that because you're forced to take these things that you don't actually want to take.
Correct.
I remember back in 5th edition. I want to say it was 5th edition. That was when Space Wolves were really popular. Longfangs were really good, but Grey Hunters were really good because you had to buy troops. Grey Hunters were a really strong troop choice. Therefore, they had the most efficient troops, give or take. Out of most of the Marine armies, you didn't see a lot of other Marine armies other than Space Wolves because, again, I have to pay this troop tax, but my troops are actually worth taking. So it really benefited people that had good troops. I wonder if Core is going to do the same thing.
I hope that you're right, Adam. I hope they play around with it. I don't think they're going to at first, unfortunately. I think Core has a lot of potential. I think if you made it a more dynamic system, then I think we're going to see, because I think we're just going to see it's printed on your card and that's what it is, if you're Core or not. I think a dynamic system could be really interesting. Because there are things that should be Core at times and shouldn't, right? If you're playing Space Marines and you're playing a third company list, for instance, that's all, the tactical, like the regular tactical company kind of thing, then probably like all your Phobos troops shouldn't be Core, right? Or scouts shouldn't be Core.
Right.
But if you're like, oh, I'm playing a 10th company list, all of a sudden, then actually those should all be your Core thing.
Yep.
You could have something that's like, is your warlord wearing Phobos armor? Well, then all your Phobos units get Core. Is he wearing Gravis armor? Well, then all your Gravis units get Core.
Right.
Is he wearing the regular Mark 10 armor? Then all your regular intercessors get Core, and you have this dynamic system. I don't think that we're going to get that, unfortunately, at least not off the bat. But something like that would be really cool and could help. It wouldn't necessarily be restrictive because you still have the option of what to make, what kind of army you want to build, but it could help reward and funnel you into building these fluffy lists that are kind of self-contained and and make sense like that.
I would also tag onto that, Abe. I mentioned that in the article today, which was if Core was based off of your warlord, like you're talking about, that also incentivizes you to not just take some weird warlord option for your army just because it's the most gamey, advantageous thing to do. You actually want to build a list around a specific core. Again, applying it to the guard. I know they don't have a lot of auras right now, but if I take a tank commander, it makes sense that my Layman Rust tanks would be core options now because I'm playing a tank company. So
if we've already seen references to Core interacting with auras, and we've seen Core interacting with stratagems, I would in no way be surprised to see them interact with warlord traits either. And to be honest, warlord traits are really dull and boring in the game right now. So I mean, there's the 2 people take, and then a whole bunch that are never ever taken. So they definitely have bandwidth to go in there and be like, hey, let's have 1 or 2 warlord traits be things that modify Core.
I think that would be a good option.
You get more variety. It gives people well, picking your warlord trait isn't an interesting decision in 40K right now. I'll put it that way. And anything that makes that decision interesting, I'm in favor of.
Right. I mean, how cool would it be if Space Marines had a rule that says when you're building your army, pick what company it's coming from?
Sure. Yep.
And that changes what the core in your army is, right?
Sure.
And you're like, oh, I'm playing first company. Well, then these 10 things get the core keyword. Or I'm playing, the reserve company. These ones get the keyword. Right. I'm playing 10th company. I mean, that would be like a super cool idea.
And that could be totally applied, and that could be totally applied to many other races too.
Sure, exactly.
Like you would be like, are you running this would be the equivalent of which of the company cards from Old Epic are you using? Are you using an aspect warrior host where you have a lot of aspects, or are you using a guardian host where your army is mostly guardians?
A Beal-Tan and an Iendin army should have different core options, right? Like they function differently, and right now there's not really any structural way of making those look different, because you can't. I mean, you could be like, these get troops instead of these, but that doesn't matter anymore. Because
also, we haven't touched on this, but I do think that so these are all of the fluff and positive reasons why they can do interesting things they could do with core. I do think that possibly one of the most important things that core is going to do is this is a mechanism for the designers to regain control of the game, because for decades now, what happens is 40K is just, I mean, let's be honest, 40K is too large of a game to be easily testable, even with playtesters. There's just too many, there's probably 1,000 units in the game, and there's too many interactions. But what core lets them do is right off the bat. I mean, and we've seen it. We've all played 40K competitively, and when we've hung out in that environment for decades, and we know what's the first thing that happens when a codex drops. All of the big players get it, and they just immediately make a big database and a spreadsheet, and they just start methodically going through every possible combo. They find all the broken combos, and then that becomes the new meta. So this core lets immediately taking all characters out of being able to buff each other right there. That's probably
we don't know all characters, but
let's say the vast majority of them. If the vast majority of characters are no longer core, right there, that eliminates the possibility for a huge amount of unforeseen combos. So the question is, if you're the design team, it's like, how much of your bandwidth is required that the company has to pay for to constantly be going back and fixing things because the game broke because of some crazy, if I take Lieutenant what's his name from a Forge World book from 15 years ago, who never had a miniature made. If I take him and then I combine him with this other codex that just came out, and then I ally this other unit, I win. And the design team is probably at some point saying, we're just tired of dealing with this. So
it's hard for them to experiment when they do have that issue, right? They can't create interesting auras. They can't create interesting rules that they in their head are like, we want this to target this specific unit or this specific army or whatever. Because of that, they can't go. There are too many units. There's too many options. When you factor in Forge World, especially for them to be like, oh yeah, there's that one corner case scenario where that one model interacts in this one funky way and creates this really weird thing. Do we FAQ it? Do we let it ride? What do we do? And then it's just a big spiral. It's being able to say, hey, this aura or this ability only targets core units for this army. And I would also say too, they've even shown it's the Silver Templars, for example, they targeted specifically core Primaris units, right? So they can even use the keyword system to actually narrow it down even further for really specific stratagems. Right. It's that granularity with this is something about the keyword system that they haven't tried to take advantage of as much as I think they could have in the past, in previous editions. And I feel like with the addition of the core keyword, this is an attempt by Games Workshop to actually get more granular with those abilities, with those stratagems, to say, hey, we do want to take back a little bit of the freedom just to make the sandbox a little bit more stable overall. So again, we want you to play a particular way. but we're also trying to do that because of game balance or other game issues to make sure everybody's, on an even playing field. So it's not a bad thing that they're trying to rein stuff in, even though it does feel like we're losing some of our freedom in terms of army builds or army construction or things like that. But I mean, this happens every edition in terms of changing the way players build armies, right?
Sure.
And it happens with whatever changes affect the meta, players start building that way. This is just another one of those edition changes where, yeah, we're going to have to adapt. Players will adapt to it. And I don't know, in a year, 2 years, we're still going to be talking about how broken whatever was. So
yes, we will. 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sad that limiting combos and reining those in. I'm not sad about, right? Like this is like you're I think you're correct in all regards. This helps them limit the random combos that can pop up later and make things a little more reliable. So that's great.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about this kind of weird situation that we're in and what we think is going to happen in October. Because basically we're in October. We're effectively in October from a release point of view. All of the games, we're moving back to 40K this weekend. We're going to get pre-orders of a bunch of new terrain kits, a bunch of new mission packs, a bunch of 40. So we're back to 40K stuff. 40K releases after 2 months. And those things actually hit the shelves. Like the Vertigus box.
First weekend in October, right?
Exactly. So that takes us into October. And I'm just going to kind of set it up here and then let you guys talk about it. But we know for sure they've been saying up and down for a while now. October is when the Space Marine Codex and the Necron Codex are going to hit. So we're going to go back to having 2 codexes are going to come out that month. I'm sure because they do it 100% of the time, those codexes are clearly going to they're going to come with all the codex accessories. So there's going to be the dice, and there's going to be the cards, and there's going to be all that kind of stuff. But piling up since they rolled out 9th edition, since they rolled out 9th edition, we have seen, I think, 3 seminars now, maybe 4 Games Workshop seminars have happened just since then. We now have something that's never happened in the history of Games Workshop, which is we have 40 units have been announced and unveiled formally by the company between Necrons and Marines, and that are not out yet. So there is a huge glut and backlog of units that people know are coming. They've been confirmed. Some of them have stats teased, and a lot of this stuff is almost certainly going to be coming in October. So, I don't know what they're going to do, but that's a crazy large amount of kits to and I'll let you guys go. I do real quick for Scott.
Scott, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. In fact, I think Guilliman is a prime candidate for nerfing because he's not an auto include anymore, but he's really strong. He's really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, so you know what? I'm on the fence. I'm going to go back. I'm on the fence. The more he's probably the one option that they might not, just because he's a Primarch.
He is a Primarch. Yep.
And everyone should listen to him.
Yeah.
He's going to say, his special rule will be Reboot Guilliman treats everyone as core.
Yeah.
It'll be like all units in caps. His power affects all units.
So in terms of releases, though, the thing about it is Games Workshop has shown all of these kits off, confirmed all these units, confirmed all these models. We don't have a timetable for releases for them yet. We're suspecting them to be released alongside or around the same time as the Codex. That would make sense. However, supply line, supply chain, logistics, it's all jacked up right now anyway, right? Yep. We might get lucky and they do release a bunch of stuff at the same time. I know that local stores are also having issues getting stuff that was back ordered too. Yep. So it's all up in the air. Are we going to get 40 kits in October? Holy crap, that would be nuts. Are we going to get it spread out October, November, December? That seems a little bit more manageable, a little bit more likely. I think we're going to see this is going to be one of those weird situations too, where we probably get a codex. We will get the codexes, right? Necrons and Space Marine codexes. We'll get those. We'll probably get a couple of units. Hopefully at least the core units for the army. would be released alongside the codexes, but we may not see things like the Hammerfall drop pod. It's not. Is it a pod? The Hammerfall drop thing.
Drop turret.
Drop turret. Thank you. We might not see that alongside the codex. We might not see the Gladiator alongside the codex. We might not see the new Ophidian destroyers or whatever, or the fire servo turret thing, fire whatever. We might not see those things get a codex release, but those are in the works and those are on the way. This could also be why they've actually announced all of these models and all these units, because they know, they learned their lesson from Chapter House, right? Which was, don't put a unit in a codex without a model or art or a picture of the model on the way,
Right, we've made
it. Yeah, we have this model. It's on the way. It's just not released yet. So maybe the fact that, all of the logistical issues aside, the reason they're showing off all these models ahead of time is because they know that people are going to get the codex and be like, oh, hey, here's all these really cool models or really cool units. Where are the models at? And they can say, oh, it's coming,
Right. See, I think the opposite, actually, Adam. I think we're more likely to see the Gladiator and the Hammerfall stuff. I think we're probably less likely to see the stuff that got that you can still get, or you were able to get in one of the box sets already.
Oh, sure. I was just throwing those out as an example. It could be pick a unit.
Right.
We might not see whatever until later.
I think assault intercessors and things like that, like the full multi-part kit, I feel like those are the ones that are more likely to be pushed off, rather than
because they were announced later.
Right. They were announced later, and you couldn't get assault intercessors in boxes right now. If you really need those, you can get the easy to build ones, the easy to build eliminators, or exterminators. One of the E ones. Yeah.
One of the E ones.
Yeah.
Not an I unit, an E
Eradicators.
Unit. Eradicators, exterminators, eliminators.
Yeah, educators.
I want to see the Space Marine educators.
Yeah.
I like
They're
that.
Called Mentor Marines.
Oh, there you go.
It's just a heavy bolter that fires books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another one of the chapters.
We drop some knowledge on you. Yeah. No, I was just using those as examples, but I think I agree. They're just, it could be whatever. I just don't think. I think there's going to be a slow trickle out for those units, whatever they may be. I don't think we're going to get. I mean, we might get some crazy. Massive release.
I was going back and checking, because they have done some really if October was just Marines, they could do them all. Or if or if October was just Necrons, they could do them all, because they've
done that before, yeah.
Well, exactly. Like when, I don't know what the unit count was, but the unit count when they did it's when they introduced a large all new army. So when they did what are the Idnith Deepkin? That was a lot of kits. Sure. They came out over 4 weeks. And when they did
10, it was 10 to 15 kits.
And when they did All-Star Bone Reapers, that was a lot of kits. And it came out over 3 to 4 weeks. But
if October is one army and November is the other one, is it Necrons or Space Marines first?
I think it's going to be 2 weeks of each is what they're going to do. I think they're going to introduce one, and there'll be 2 weeks. And it'll be like the Codex and 6 units, and then six more units, and then they'll switch, and then they'll do, and then the rest of them will just trickle out.
Yeah,
because they've already locked themselves. They painted themselves into a corner now, which is Necrons and Marines are both coming in October. So
the other thing too that's interesting is they have also announced the next 4 books, right?
Yes.
So
which are supposed to be here by early 2021, which means January.
No. The next 4 books are coming out before the end of the year, actually.
Yeah.
The early 2021 book was Dark Angels and a Mystery Xenos book. So there's 2 more after those. We already know they're on the way. So there's 4 books on the way, 3 of which are Space Marine books. Wouldn't it make sense to release some Space Marine kits with those other Space Marine books?
Sure, absolutely.
I think we're gonna get. I think we're gonna get a Space Marine releases in October. They're gonna put all the Space Marine stuff in October, and then all the Necron stuff, or the Necron book and everything, will hit or go up for pre-order on the 31st. So it will technically come out in October, just like
right. And it's
just
also you know what?
Remember Orktober? That the Orc stuff came out at like the last week of October, what was technically in October, or how Sisters of Battle came out in 2019.
And you're reminding me of something, which is that GW does have this thing where they put their spooky releases, like they tend to do Death and Ghosts and Necrons right around Halloween. So they might just do Marine, and then just switch and do Necrons that last week of October, and then
I think
November.
they could do it. They could. I think they can intermix stuff however they want to. They could really do. They could do Necrons, a couple 2 weeks of Necrons, 2 weeks of Marines. Drop some more Necron kits, drop some more Marine kits, and then say, hey, here's the next book. Here's the Storm Strike, or here's the Storm Speeder with the Blood Angels book. 100%. Here's the Gladiator with the Space Wolves book.
The Gladiator's got to come out with the Blood Angels book, because we saw that they have a red painted Gladiator.
Correct.
Sure.
And the Storm Speeder is going to come.
And a Storm Speeder.
And the Storm Speeder is going to completely come out with the Dark Angels, because
again, I'm mixing and matching. You guys get what I'm saying, though. Is
I get what
they
you're
have
saying.
3 more Space Marine books. They could easily drop Space Marine units with those books to say, kind of bump 100%. Those releases up too. So
100%.
They have enough units. They can focus on Necrons in October. Maybe they'll do the reverse, Abe, and do Necrons for 3 weeks, and then the very, very last week pre-order Space Marine book. Just to
Halloween
be technically
is a Saturday. Halloween is a Saturday.
Sure.
Which is when stuff goes up for pre-order, right?
Gotta be Necrons. I'm putting it down now. It's Necrons. Necrons for Halloween. That's my guess.
That makes sense to put your spooky skeletons up for sale on Halloween.
Yep.
I don't disagree. I'm just throwing it out there. They could easily mix and match stuff. Because Blood Angels are vampires, and vampires and Halloween go together.
You got it there too. You got it there too.
Space so we need Wolves, I'm just saying.
We need to have the Necron Blood Angels team up on Halloween.
Bingo.
That's the real where they fight the Scooby-Doo gang.
Exactly. Those darn Tyranids in there. Yeah.
Velma is Slanesh, right? Each of the Scooby gang is one of the 4 Chaos Gods. And then Scooby-Doo is Malai, or Scooby-Doo is Abaddon. He keeps them all together or something.
We are right now, anyone who is listening, someone is now required to paint up and convert the mystery machine and the entire gang in 40K style. Send us your pictures.
I think it wouldn't be the mystery machine. I think it would be called the Chaos Theory.
Chaos, right? Look. Shaggy is Nurgle. Velma
is Slanesh. You just said no. She'd be Tzeentch.
Velma's Tzeentch. Daphne Slanesh, and Fred is Khorne.
I think Daphne should be Khorne and Fred should be Slanesh, just to mix things up.
Just because, you could do that too.
Sure.
I just want to see a Land Raider painted like the mystery machine. That's all.
And then Scooby is either Chaos Undivided or he's Malai.
It's a spawn.
The spawn.
I think Scooby being Abaddon makes sense.
Yeah.
He keeps screwing up everybody else's. I'd have got away with it if it weren't for you and kids and your blasted dog. So, just saying. The Warhound.
I think that is our show.
We didn't even talk about the terrain rules, man.
All right, talk about the terrain. Here we go. This week there is new terrain. It's coming out on Saturday. A whole bunch. Let me go look real quick. I think there's 6 different terrain kits.
It's not just the terrain kits though that I wanted to talk about real fast.
And they have rules.
The thing I wanted to talk about is the rules that they're coming out with.
All right.
This is not the first time where we've seen Games Workshop have these custom terrain kits that you can build in lots of different ways. But if you build them in specific ways, they can actually be used as that. That right there is the engine shed, which has some rules. If you have a vehicle in there, the infantry can repair it, things like that. But if you look at it, it actually shows you their breakdown on the card that's getting pointed to. It shows you the top-down view. It shows you where the walls are supposed to have been, constructed correctly. So it's basically saying like, hey, if you built this if you built this kit that looks like this, you can put it in this specific layout and have these specific rules with it. We also know that these rules are going to be part of the tactical. Oh crap! What's it called? Tactical discipline or tactical deployment
The mission books.
rules
The
that are coming
mission
with the
book.
mission book.
Yep.
Yeah, and apparently players are going to get X amount of terrain points to spend as well in these rules, so you can
Okay.
you can ensure that you bring the piece of
Right.
terrain that you want to have on the tabletop. This opens up a lot of questions and a lot of options. If you are playing a specific army and you kind of want to, I want to make sure that I have a building with a second story to put my, my eliminators in or whatever. You can ensure that there's going to be one on the table now. So
I'm just imagining that there's this big giant encyclopedia. There's this giant architectural encyclopedia in the Imperium of blasted out buildings. So when you see a building that's blasted out and there's just corners, you have to look it up to figure out, okay, wait, what is this? Is this the vehicle shed?
Which one is this?
Or if I go in there and I pray, do I get lucky? Or maybe there's ammo in there. But
let me sanctuary.
Like I don't actually know if they even make complete buildings in the Imperium. They may just make corners, and that's just how it works. Like there's no such thing as a roofer in the Imperium. It's just that's all they do is they just make blasted out corners.
If they'd quit blowing stuff up, they'd have whole buildings, I guess. I don't know.
I don't think they've ever made a complete building.
I don't think they have. Well, no, not if you count fortifications.
Oh, the fortifications are like the only complete buildings. That's true.
Which, again, I think there was some hesitation or some concern from folks about having, we can't have terrain rules. Like, it's going to, like, army-specific terrain options, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we've had fortifications before. This isn't that much of a different
100%.
thing. So,
yep.
It did answer my question, which was, are these points going to come out of my army budget points, or are these going to be power level, or, oh, no, it's a third resource that we're going to have to now keep track of. So, we'll find out when we get the book how this interacts. The other big question I have is, how does this interact with match play? How are tournament organizers going to adapt or ignore these rules? Like, is that going to be a thing? I know that in Europe, it's a popular option to have a bring your own terrain style tournament. So every player brings X pieces of terrain with them as part of their entry fee, so that they can have some diverse table options. Because some of the smaller stores or smaller tournaments don't have a giant collection of terrain, so it's a good way for stores or event organizers to actually get some community participation with terrain and things like that. So it's an interesting thing. We don't have all the details yet. We just know that terrain has rules, and it's not just rubble or like light cover. There's actually some other benefits. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the terrain. I'm interested.
All right, Mars, do you want to tell us
to know more?
What is going on for the rest of the week?
So tomorrow, being Tuesday, we have the RPG Corner with JR and Megan, and we're going to be talking about what happened with D&D over the weekend. They had a lot of games, a lot of seminars.
D&D Celebration.
Yep.
Their big thing was this last weekend.
Yeah, and that's at 3 p.m. Central here on Facebook and twitch.tv/BoLS. On Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central, we have Goat Boy Painting. I think he's still working on this Age of Sigmar cow, because he was doing some custom molding with it and some conversion. And then on Friday, we have Adam in the studio talking about what's new for the weekends, thanks to Dragon Slayer Austin with the Tabletop Spotlight at 3 p.m. Central on both Facebook and Twitch.
And then we will be back here next Monday. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. Your question of the week, your snapshot question of the week, will Space Marine Scouts be Classic Marines? Will Classic Marine Scouts be core? Abe?
No.
Adam?
I'm going to say no. Classic Marine Scouts, right?
Classic Marine Scouts. Will Classic Marine Scouts be core?
No.
I'm going to say yes. I think they will. I don't think they'll be that cruel, but we'll see.
I will.
All right.
I would not
I
make them
hope
core.
I hope that they're not core.
I hope they're not, but I think they will.
Sure.
Again, I know this is supposed to be the quick answer or quick question, but going back to what Abe said earlier, if you're from the 10th company, you should totally be core scouts. But if you're not, you shouldn't be core scouts. So they could play around with that. They have that mechanism, but we'll see what happens.
All right, everyone. That is our show. Thanks so much for tuning in. And like I said, we got stuff all for you later this week, and we will be right back here, same bat time, same bat place next week. Bye, everybody.
It's got to bark